So welcome to Asher and Turning Time. And so it was that one day a sheep was strolling by, and the Lion King called over the sheep and he said, "Hey, the Pshepsel, come on over." Comes on over and he asks the sheep, "Tell me, does my breath smell?" And the Pshepsel smells the king's breath and he says, "Yeah, it's horrible." And the lion says, "Chutzpah, that's how you talk to a king?" And he had lamb chops for dinner. He ate them up. The next day a wolf goes by, and the wolf saw what happened to the sheep. So when the king called him over and he said, "Hey, the wolf, what's going on?" "Yes, your honor. Tell me, does my breath stink?" And he says, "No, king, your breath smells like roses." And the king says, "Shakran, you liar! You lied to a king!" And he devours him, eats him up. He had wolf chops. So the next day the fox gets called over, and the fox saw what happened to the sheep and he saw what happened to the wolf. And the king calls him over and he says, "Hey, the fox, tell me, how does my breath smell?" And the fox says, "Adoni HaMelech, my king, I wish I can answer you, but my nose is stuffed. I can't smell." And the Mirinoim says that, when it comes to machlokas, learn to have your nose stuffed. Just keep your nose stuffed. Learn to say, "I'm sorry, but I can't smell." A very famous metaphor. But I think there's another way how this metaphor has to be taken. There's a long narrative over here. We get stuck into little fragments of the Torah story. We're talking here about last week about there's Meraglim, and then we jump all the way over to Korach, and there's almost like no link between the stories. Like, how do you see the full picture and how does it apply to us? So my friend Ari Floor opened me up to a brand new insight, and it's something that's very interesting. Between the Meraglim and Korach, there's another two stories that the Torah shares with us. You know what those two stories are? One story is the story of the Mapilim Lalos. There were these people that wanted to go up anyway. They said, "Let's do it anyway," and then the Amalekim and the Canaanim killed them. And there's another story of the Makoy Sheshetzim. There's the story of this guy who gathered wood, gathered sticks, and they brought him to Moshe Rabbeinu, and he was Michal Shabbos, V'ragmu ba'avanim, and they killed him, they stoned him to death, they pelted him with stones. So it's like, what's the connection between all of these stories that the Torah is telling you? Are they all random stories, or is there one narrative that's connecting all of them together? So the idea is that there's one detail after the Meraglim that you have to zone into. Moshe Rabbeinu comes and he tells the Yiddelech that, because of this whole story with the Meraglim, there's a decree of 40 years wandering. The Yidden were about to go into Eretz Yisrael. There's the story of the Meraglim, and because they were crying and Mikol of the whole deal, Hashem says, "You're going to stay here for the next 40 years. Now, can you imagine how disappointing that is? And you have disappointments in your own life where you were expecting something to happen. It was so close to happening. You left the desert, you left Egypt, you finally got out. And then after all of this work, you're finally getting to the point where the story is going to finish and they lived happily ever after, and then you mess it up. And the whole thing falls apart. It collapses. Now, usually when we are notified that, Achi, you're going to be wandering for the next 40 years, there's three things that could happen. And it's these three reactions that can happen that the Torah is describing to us in the next three stories. One reaction is that you go into the zone, into the mindset of the Mapilim Lalos, and you say, "No." You go into denial and you say, "It can't be. It's impossible. I'm going up there to Israel. I don't know what happened, Meraglim. Nothing happened. I didn't mean it. I didn't say it. Don't make such a big deal over it. Delete. Control all delete. I'm going to get there anyway. Lord, get me high. I am going to get there by hook or by crook." And sometimes the way how we get by hook or by crook we go into the Mapilim Lale zone. We try to take shortcuts. There's a lot of shortcuts how to experience the spiritual divine. There's all different methods out there. A lot of times they lead to addictions, a lot of times they end up. The Torah describes what happens after you're faced with the greatest disappointment of your life and you're told that there's going to be a long journey, a 40-year journey, and you're not even going to make it. Your children are going to make it, you're not going to make it. And when you're confronted by that reality, you say, I'm going to get a shortcut. And the result of shortcuts is that the Amalekim and the Canaanim end up killing you. You end up dying. You don't end up getting there. There's a second way how people try to deal with the pain of not getting things the way they want it to be, and that's the path of the Mekoshesh Eitzim. The Mekoshesh Eitzim, he's the stick gatherer. He throws in the towel, he says, I'm out. I give up. I joined the system for a reason. I was told that things are going to be a certain way. It's not going to end up that way. I'm out. I'm done. And it's at that moment when you say, I'm done, that you die. You get pelted by stones. You're finished. That's another pitfall we fall into when we give up. We go into a yish. Then there's a third mahalach. There's a third way how people deal with it, and that's the story of Korach. And that's the most complicated one. The Mapilim Lalas and the Mekoshesh, they're relatively short. The story of Korach is very long. It's the story of somebody who says, you know what? Hashem, I'm in for the long ride. Hashem, I'm not going to take shortcuts. I'm going to be here. I'm not giving up. But I'm going to take control. I'm going to take control, and I'm going to rationally explain this is the way things have to be done. When you go into that place, the first two, these are emotional states of being. This is like you want to get a short high, or you give up, you're depressed. But there's a very long klippa called Korach, which is you come with all different types of cheshbonos, rationalizing and explaining how exactly the journey is supposed to go. Doesn't go that way. Doesn't work. One of the great Torahs that the Chassidic Master spoke about is why, after the entire story of Korach, after Korach finds himself in the ground, the Nesiim are taught to bring in a staff. They're taught to bring in their mata. After they bring in their mata, it grows almonds. It blossoms almonds. And then they all go back inside and they took back their mata. They took it back. The question is, why did they have to take it back? It's simple. You saw that Korach died. Obviously Aaron is the Kohen Gadol. Why does everybody have to bring in their mata in the first place? Why does everybody have to bring it in? And even after they brought it in, why does everybody have to take it back? You saw who's... So the idea is that Aaron HaKohen, he represents the tzaddik who he could make even a mata blossom. He could take even a dead staff, even people who are disconnected, and he could make them blossom. The secret over here was that it wasn't only that we know Korach wasn't the one. The Yidden were wondering, why was Aaron chosen? And the answer is because Aaron is the one who could make even dead staffs blossom. He could make it give birth to shkedim, to fruit. It's amazing. But what's even more astonishing and more amazing? That the Nesiim, they were very real people. The Nesiim wanted to know the truth. When the Nesiim brought in their staff, they were all expecting that, maybe I'm going to be the winner. You know what happened after Aaron's blossomed? They went in and they picked up their dead staff and they took it back. They manned up. They were moida. They recognized that, hey, Aaron is the man. He's the leader. He's the Kohen Gadol. He's the one who has the power to make dead staffs blossom, and I'm machnia myself to the new reality. It's okay for a person to toy with the Korach game. Klal Yisrael, many people toyed with the Korach game. Some were saved. Oin ben Peles saved their husband. It was like, you have to understand that when your mind comes up with Korach arguments, they're really good arguments. Korach was a tzaddik. Korach should be Korach was a tzaddik. They were great tzaddikim, and this is a continuous, when people say, like we spoke about from the Noam Agadim about Noam about keep your nose stuffy, don't get lost in machlokes. It's really easy to tell people don't get stuck in machlokes when you're not involved in one. But when your mind understands rationally that something wrong is being done and you're standing up for justice, nobody gets involved in machlokes just because. Everybody gets involved in machlokes because they believe that they're standing up for what's right. Number one. Number two, you always have in your mind rational reasons to explain how the journey should be done, how things should be made right. Things are wrong, let's do it like this. It's extremely difficult for a person to be machniya mavatal himself to an endless journey which isn't ending and it's being done all wrong. It's difficult. But the secret of the Nasiim was that after they observed what happened to Korach, they saw the downfall, they saw the results. And after they saw that they were machniya themselves, they put their egos aside, they took back their staff and they went home. And they became Nasiim again. So the lesson, the practical lesson in our world is that this is all an inner phenomenon, an inner journey everyone has to go through. We all go through things in life that we want things to be a certain way. People get married, they're expecting that they're going to enter the promised land. Very shortly afterwards they find out that they're in for a 40-year journey. A 40-year long journey. Some people say, I'm going to find a shortcut. Now you can figure out on your own what that shortcut could mean to you. Some people say, I'm out. I'm going to be a Mekosh Eitzim. Other people try to rationalize and figure out how they're going to fix people and how they're going to change people, and this is the way it has to be done. And ultimately, the limit is, Hashem, it's your journey. The journey is the destination. I'm going along with you because kacha, this is the way you made it. And it's only then that we become ro'i and we become developed enough that we can actually discover Eretz Yisrael today.